Okay, Martin, glad to see you. All right, I'm going to get us started, and I want to make sure that we all understand something because I think we're at the time and point in the year that we do. If you are tracking your grades now and you're concerned about them, you need to take a look at the official grade book for this course, which is Jupiter Grades. Now, we've been trying to run a dual system, and frankly, the grade book in Canvas is problematic. So if you want to see your official grade, you need to check Jupiter Grades, okay? You go there and take a look to see them. All right, now we're going to talk today. We're down here to week 11, which is the 6th and the 8th of November. And before we get started, I want to take some time to just kind of cover some logistics with us to see so we know what's going on. Next week is the 13th and the 15th, which will be week 12. You have an interactive session and a hands-on project, as well as 2 chapter quizzes. Okay, you'll notice that's a kind of a continuing theme: a session, a project, and a quiz. And I've got some resources I added on here today. And then Wednesday, when I do the virtual Wednesday screencast, I'll have some more resources. We'll talk some more about the chapter. Now, as we scroll on down, we get to the week 13. Okay. There is no class time on Monday, the 11th. That gives you some flex time to work on the finals. Okay. There's no class on Wednesday the 20th. Okay, so let me back up. No class on Monday, November 20th. So we're all clear. That gives you some flex time to work on the finals. There's no class time on Wednesday, the 22nd of November. That is, as you suspect, the Thanksgiving holiday. Okay. Now we're going down here, and we'll take a look at week 14. Anything that you missed, you just catch on the front end. And on week 14, I'll take a look there. As I mentioned before, that week is flex time for you to work on your finals. That's week 14. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and I've had one or two more of us join, the official grade book for the course is Jupiter. So the grade book in Canvas is, well, frankly, it's a nightmare, and I do what I can do to record it, but Jupiter is the one. And so if you find a discrepancy or something, contact me. But Jupiter is your official grade book for the course. Will help us if we do transition. There, and again, the 14th, which is November 27th, 29th, that's flex time, work on the finals. Okay. And then we'll come down to that was week 14, and we'll come down to week 15. Okay. And we'll look at that. And as you'd guess, that's flex time to work on the final. Okay, so we won't hold any class. Now I want to talk about the final exams, and I'll be doing this on and off as we roll through the finals week. Here's the final exam schedule, everybody. It's for this course, okay, which meets on Mondays from 2 to 3:15. All right, and we'll find it down here. Here it is. Now, there's really not a 2 to 3:15 slot in the institution, so they say the closest we can get is the one we choose. And so your final exam will be on Monday, the 11th of December, from 3:15 to 5:15. Now, you don't have to be present to be here because, as you would guess, you could do some things ahead of time. In fact, you can do the whole thing ahead of time if you choose to do it. I've got okay, the first is I want you to do, it's kind of a project, and that's luxury vehicle infotainment packages, a comparison of those. And I want you to, and I've got the directions there for you, okay? Take a look at it for just a minute. And there are the directions, and then that's the place you upload them, okay? So kind of a project thing. And then also, the hyper-organization book, that textbook, a self-developed quiz drawn from that, okay? And that's due the 12th of December, okay? and then Loudon chapter 14 and chapter 15, and that's it for finals weeks. Now I want you to notice something. Let's see, this one's due at 3:15. So this first one is due at the start of the final exam period, and note this: if you've had a class with me before, I'll divide your final up into something that's due at the start and stuff that's due at the end. And the stuff due at the end are usually going to be quizzes, okay? Because we only have a limited amount of time. And then the self-developed quiz, same story. That's due at the start of the final exam period, which would be the 12th at 3:15. And then the two quizzes are due at the end of the final exam period. And you'll see that, okay? And that's due the 12th at December 12th at 5:15. Same story for the other quiz that ends the whole thing out. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now, this week we're going to talk about Loudon chapter 11. So what I want to do is kind of hit some of the highlights of it. And we got a file over here. Let me grab it for us for a minute. Open that up. Now, this again walks us through the business value chain as they talk about there and over in the chapter. And this is an interesting chapter because it moves us from we used enterprise. We covered enterprise computing last week. We've really been kind of dabbling with it through the whole course. Now we talk about what we would call using this to create an enterprise experience. And this whole business about the knowledge business value chain, and it starts over, it's on chapter 11 there. And, I've got some of the figures pulled there, but we'll just talk. Hey, this is the application of knowledge management, managing knowledge, but managing them as systems, okay? Now, this shows you kind of the knowledge acquisition chain. And the key thing to understand is this. There are really two kinds of knowledge in any. Let me back up for a minute. You have to understand knowledge management. You got to understand that chain that gets you there. You start with data, okay, and then you go to information, which is data that's actionable. You can do something with it, make a decision typically, and then you go from information to knowledge, okay. And knowledge is information that I can use over and over and over on a basis. I can use, and typically it's something that fits within an algorithm. An algorithm is just simply, here's an algorithm. You know, today's Monday the 6th. Next Monday will be November 13th. How do I know? Well, a week is 7 days, and so it's pretty much in its most simplistic fashion. So that piece there in the chapter, they talk about using knowledge. Okay, knowledge is important because you've acquired and processed data. You've used information. Okay, and knowledge is information that you can use and reuse in a variety of situations or with the same situation on a repeated basis. That's what makes it so valuable, because it's data that's been really, really refined, okay? And you've spent the time and the energy and the experience to do that. Now, that second figure, and I'll just kind of go through them because I feel like they're pretty decent. Here they walk you through, the authors do allow us through three different kinds of pieces of this. Enterprise-wide knowledge management system, and then knowledge work systems, and then intelligent techniques. Okay, and they have some here. We've talked some about learning management. Well, you've experienced learning management system because you've been using Canvas, you've used Moodle, maybe you've taken a course somewhere else, used Blackboard. Okay, And these all try to organize everything in a particular way. This is what I really think is the exciting part. Now, this part, data mining, neural network, data mining particularly, we've talked about that. These things like intelligent agents, bots, things of that nature, generic algorithms, they're okay. Got some interesting stuff, case-based reason. But I'm going to probably focus, I will focus a lot of my attention on these right here, because these provide what I would call enterprise experiences. Okay, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get a look at some of the sources there. Now, this third figure kind of walks us through how this all happens. Okay, and you've got end results, and notice there's a two-way flow between these. Okay, where we have end users, okay, who create and capture and tag and store and receive. You know, if you post, if you on social media, anytime you tag people or you tag something, okay, what you're really doing is you're basically throwing it into a database or into some type of intelligent agent table that'll go back and cull through there and find that tag. So then you've got this unified repository. You've got all these kinds of things all pulled together. Okay, that's easier said than done. Trust me, because most of this stuff. Now I'm going to talk, for example, about graphics, video, news feeds, wikis, and blogs. Those create or are based upon a lot of what we call unstructured data, even email, and those are data that are not easily. They're data that we have to really work hard at refining them. Okay, so we can get them to a point where we can put them into a table, because we tend to work with databases in tables. We work with spreadsheets in tables. We understand as human beings, we see things like that. We see categories and rows, okay, columns and rows, and then we see an intersection of the two, okay. And so we get a lot of unstructured data, like in the management science course. We went through an exercise a week or two ago where we took tweets, we stripped them down to where we could create what we called tokens, then we counted them, then we analyzed them, okay? But again, the exciting part about this chapter, or I think that's the most useful, is what I would call the knowledge-based experience, and we'll get there. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now, this is using an intelligent agent or a decision, it's an intelligent agent process whereby it just goes through a series of conditional statements. You say, how do you know they're conditional statements? Well, notice I see the if, and I see if this, and then we continue on. These are really a set of nested conditional statements. And back when you took Business 1123 with me, if you took it, you remember the very first thing we did was we did that payroll problem where we figured out the FICA every month on a rolling basis, and we used a series of nested conditional statements. We did the same thing in Business 1123 in the second assignment, where I gave you a set of temperatures and temperatures and soft drink sales, and I said, okay, put them, sort them in an order and put them in descending order, basically. Then then create a graphic, okay. And then the last thing I asked you to do was, okay, and I gave you some figures, and I said categorize them. And so if you were smart, you use a VLOOKUP, which really is just a series of nested statements hidden off. You don't have to mess with it. You just create a VLOOKUP table. You choose the value, okay? You say, okay, this value, I'm going to check it against an array of values, and then you determine should the output be from column 1 or column 2? That's really all. This is the same thing that they're showing us here. You're just kind of seeing it in a different format. Now, again, here's this whole process working us through, and this is a case-based reasoning kind of agent. Now, the people that use this the most are folks who work with highly structured problems. Just like there are unstructured data, there are unstructured problems. And if you've taken a course with me, you might recall where I said, the quality of a decision is subject to the known alternatives and the known ways to solve known alternatives and the known states of nature. And then if you remember, I put up a quadrant. I put up a square with quadrants where I have the alternatives that I know I can use, those that I don't know, problems that or states of nature I understand, and states of nature I don't. And the riskiest situations are always, obviously, where I don't really know what the conditions are, okay, and I don't know what to do about them. Now, this situation of using a case-based reasoning, if you take pharmaceutical products, when they're developed and made, they go through this process. This is almost at not only just the physical process, but also kind of an experimental model, okay? And then the same thing when people try to figure out best practices, say for a surgery or anything like that. But what we do is we take cases and we try to build on them. The medical field does this by taking a look at when someone dies, they have a committee at whatever hospital, or if it's at a clinic or something, who they go and determine the cause of death. Okay, that's why every state has a coroner who makes an official pronouncement on what caused their death. Now, if it's natural or unnatural death, we want to know, why did this person die? And hospitals who have these mortality committees really want to know, did we do something? What did we do wrong, or what did we miss? Did we misdiagnose, or something of that nature? Now, and I hate to be so pedantic about this, but a lot of these concepts are just, that's what they are. They're conceptual in nature, and you almost just kind of have to approach them like this. Now, here, okay, is a fuzzy logic system. And probably the best example in the book talks about this would be your thermometer. Now, if you have a smart home or smart devices in your home, they'll keep the temperature within a particular range. If you're like me and you have an old-fashioned thermometer, you have something you set at a temperature, and when the air temperature around that thermometer hits a certain level, then it goes on. And when it reaches a certain level, it stops. A smart home would have thermometers, would have sensors all over the house, okay? So the temperature of the entire house is monitored. If you're like me and you just have a thermometer in the hall, that's what you're getting, is the air temperature of the hall. Now, this stuff's kind of expensive, so my wife and I kind of did an alternative. We went to, I don't know, Home Depot or somewhere, and we got little room monitors, so we could monitor the temperatures in the room. And so we could kind of figure out, based on that, we did some trial and error to figure out where should we set the thermometer so that we have the whole house heated or cooled like we want to. Now, we didn't go spend, $1,000 to get the system or anything like that at all. We cheaped out on it, and it works fairly well. But this is a good example of that type of system. It's also if you have a vehicle and you have settings in it for the seat and a lumbar control and how far it's back and the steering wheel comes down or stays at a certain level, That's the same type of thing here. It operates on that fuzzy logic. You put in M1 for settings 1, M2 for setting 2. That's how it operates. So now these are exciting to me because they deal with experience, okay, as opposed to just, and you know, in this course and in other courses you've had with me, I talk a lot about dashboards, okay, because that's what you'll be primarily working with. But what you'll see is the people you work for more and more are utilizing knowledge-based experiences. Now, all of you have probably had them, and you didn't know that that was occurring when it occurred, but you did. If you're a gamer or you've played a game, you have experienced a knowledge-based system, probably a fuzzy logic type of system, okay? If you've ever used a simulator, same type of story. We'll look at some of those because I've got some of those in terms of the resources. Now, and this figure just walks you through the input layer, the hidden layer, and the output layer. And this model, okay, and they're working here with, like, say, like checking out, is this a valid or a fraudulent credit card purchase, okay? And you've probably seen the commercial, I think it's Wells Fargo, where you have a little app on your phone, and if they get a questionable purchase, they text you, and boom, you can turn your card off by pressing the button on the phone, okay? The problem is this: if you travel, you're in for a lot of fun. We installed one of those apps, and then we went on a vacation, and I was ended up finally having to call them and tell them, look, let's just forget this. Just call me if you think something's funny. But because when I started making purchases out of my zip code, okay, they thought, something's up. So in that sense, their fuzzy logic system was not quite as good as it could be. But now this whole layer, and when I've talked about dashboards before, and dashboards are kind of probably the most extensive type of knowledge management that we have. You got to understand, it may or may not be you handling the input layer, but you definitely will be the person who's on the in terms of the output layer. Now, the question is, all right, who do you share the output layer with, and who do you share the input layer? Now, the hidden layer is probably all software, the interface between the two of them, okay? And so that's going to be up to you and whoever to figure that one out. And a lot of this is just so straightforward, but it's straightforward, but it's the computational expertise it takes to do this, and just the thought process is heavy duty. The easier this stuff looks, and the more whiz bang it gets, the more code that it entails. And that's just a fact of life. And there's a point where the code is way beyond where you and I are at as decision makers. Now, this walks you through, looking at chromosomal tendencies. You can go out to things like, we'll go out to one. Let's go out, we'll pop us out here for a minute, and we'll go to Ancestry.com. Okay, and they're one of these. And Ancestry.com, there they are. Now, you can go through here and get a check, and this is, you can go online and look at records and find, you could start with you, and you'll go back as far as there are records in this country. Then I think they can, and of course, then you can go, if you have an approximate idea of when people your folks arrived here, if you're from here, okay, born here, then at a certain level, then you can go on forward. Then there's one of these television shows, I think it's on PBS, it's called Finding Your Roots, where the guy walks you through that. Then he ends it with doing a DNA analysis, and they can provide you a DNA analysis now that will tell you, well, most of your DNA make up the chromosomes. They're all from this part of the world or that part of the world. Okay, so again, that's that type of system that utilizes that data. Now, the this little this figure here talks about what we call an intelligent agent, okay, aka a bot. Now, when people said, okay, well, the Russians hacked the election, and they were 126 million people who were exposed to stuff that they put out there, and what they did was a classic, what we call misinformation campaign. You say, what do you mean? They had a bot that would go through they'd set up a bot that would mimic a person and would look like, and this person, this bot, would scan through people on the basis of their posts to see if it looked like they had any political, if they were interested in politics or in political affiliation, that thing, or they were commenting on a particular piece of news or on a candidate or whatever. And then and once that bot saw key words in their tags, okay, then it would communicate back to a person, okay, a second person, a bot, that where you'd land and you'd comment. And the whole idea was just to stir people up. They've been working on these systems for a long time. The first time the Russians ever used disinformation was back in the early 90s, when what was then the Republic of Georgia decided it wanted, well, Georgia, it was part of the Soviet Union, and they decided to become a republic and be independent of what is now the Russian Federation, or AKA what at the time was the Soviet Union. To make a long story short, they infiltrated banking systems and changed balances and accounts. They put up bad information into government websites, and so they kind of perfected these little bots that go out. They're somewhat like a virus, but just a little, but a little bit more intelligent. And that's how primarily that these have worked, and how, for example, in the last election, they used these intelligent agents that would search out, and based upon what they found, they would respond. And you can see that whole process there. And this is all built beautifully to reflect what's built. It's designed to work in a network. And you could see here the software agents P&G used and how they all communicated between each other, the steps. And again, it's just a network process. Now, I'm a little more didactic at this time than I normally am, for a simple reason. This stuff, again, is really what I call knowledge experiences, okay? Now, one of the things we've learned, and one of the ways the internet has changed things, is that people not only are unwilling to stay in a queue very long, and I talked about this this morning in management science. We're talking about analyzing queues. People want instant gratification, and they want an experience with their purchase as well as the experience after they've purchased, okay? And so that whole thing of, I get in a car and I can take, well, I'll just show you, okay? Let's go over for a minute, and I'm going to look, let's see, I'm going to look at let's look at a Land Rover, because I think the chapter, if not mistaken, starts us out with Land Rover Jaguar and what they're doing with CAD CAM. Okay, now they've got the official site, and they probably should have. Here we go. I could probably pop in here on the Range Rover 2018. and I can see it, okay, what the thing looks like and all that business. Get some interior views, etc. And again, this is to let you kind of experience the vehicle, okay? The old days, you went down and drove one. You can still go down and do the test drive, but one of these days you'll be able to do. I'm certain that especially on high-end vehicles, they are building virtual reality types of simulators that you can just walk in and see, what will this thing be like if I really owned it and I drove it? How would it feel without ever leaving home? Okay, I want to go back here for just a minute. We're going to talk about this is a very important premise when we talk about knowledge and knowledge management. Okay, now if you were to ask me which of these is the most important, okay, I would say that probably these two last are the most important, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, when the authors talk about knowledge being sticky, okay, something that's enmeshed in a firm's culture. The reason that you have a Silicon Valley, the reason that you have a Detroit, the reason that at the start of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century, that the main oil fields in the United States were in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and now today they're out here, out this part of the country, is because knowledge is sticky, and people follow that, and if they're knowledge workers of any type, they tend to land where there's business for them, okay? They may stay, they may not. That's why there's a Silicon Valley. The other, and when you talk about it being situational, it's conditional, okay? And talking about when to apply a procedure, it being as important as knowing the procedure itself. One of the challenges that we face, okay, especially in medical care, is that our ability to provide medical care has outpaced our ability to understand when and how to use it, okay? Especially in what are known as heroic kinds of procedures. And I could tell you from personal knowledge, I had my mom, she was there, and she was on life support, okay? She was not in any kind of pain because they were pumping morphine into her. But I didn't go in and say, hey, Mom, how you doing? What's going on? That was long ago. I walked in here, and here's this person. There she is, her body, she's in a bed, okay? And so that we had to have a long dialogue with her physician, among ourselves, about what do we do? Because our ability to keep her heart pumping and everything has far outstripped our ability, okay, to make a decision, okay? And finally our only choice was, okay, well, we'll take her off life support and see what the good Lord does or doesn't do with her. Well, whatever happens, okay? We have, and now all of you in your age range, younger people, you're coming to a point where in our society, sooner or later, probably sooner than you would want or I would like, we will come to a point where people will start to say, okay, we have the ability to design babies. You want a girl or boy? We've detected this that could be and we already have this kind of thing going on. We've detected this problem. You want to let the fetus come to term. And those are moral and ethical questions, spiritual questions, way beyond the machinery and the mechanics of people who are in the medical profession. The other is the question of, for example, pharmaceuticals. We have drugs out there that do incredible things, but they're exceptionally expensive. And so we have to ask ourselves, okay, is it worth it? How do we manage and this is for pharmaceutical companies especially. How do we manage billions of dollars we may spend to create a drug and balance it off with potential side effects of that drug, okay, and people's ability to afford it, okay? And if there's something that can deal, or a medical procedure that's beyond the reach of an average person, but would would help them, that's something that we're going to have a problem with. And that's so when they say knowledge is situational, okay, it's a conditional kind of thing. Let me give you one example, and we'll move on from this. I think it's a really good one. If you took a look at Stephen Jobs, he really had two careers. His first career was when he was a designer and a computer guy there at Apple. He designed products, okay? If you read much about him, how did he get into design? He took a course in calligraphy, of all things, and something just happened in his brain, and so he started developing these beautiful products. Well, pretty soon the market caught up with him, and his stuff was not as fabulous as they thought it was, or by comparison. And so then they went public, okay? And after going public, the people at Wall Street said, we need to bring in adults to run the company, okay? And so at that point, Stephen Jobs kind of got run off. Did you have a question there, Hudson? Let me take you off there.
No, my bad.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, no question. Okay, all right. Then I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to go ahead and stop your video. There you go. Okay, now when Stephen Jobs came back to Apple, and the people at Apple, hey, we're going down. They were literally, Apple's going bankrupt. We need you back to save us. He surprised everybody, because when he came back, he became one of the world's foremost experts on supply chain and manufacturing, because he understood he was going to have to sell a lot of stuff really fast to pull them out of the hole. And so he did. He helped design the world's largest manufacturing facility is Foxconn there in China. He helped design that, okay? He did a lot of work with the supply chain processes of Apple. And this is a guy who never even had a course in management science. He's a genius, but he figured out the knowledge he had about product design and all of that was nice, but was not suited for the conditions under which he's operating. That was, he had to get his company back in terms of just making stuff and getting it out the door, okay? So when we talk about knowledge being situational, now the other is this. For you as professional people coming aboard, I hate to tell you this, but the amount of information or knowledge I've accumulated in my lifetime in terms of training and experience and education to function and be successful throughout your career to the point where at my point in the career, in my career, you'll probably have to do that. You'll probably have to do it on a factor of about 10. You say, are you serious? Yes. To keep up, I have to do at least probably, I guess, 12, 15 hours worth of courses every year. And I'm an instructor, and that and reviewing articles and all that, and just to keep up, everything is changing so fast. And so it's not just limited to it's not limited to technology. It's all industries where this is changing. So get ready for that, and that'll be one of those things you'll get to have some big fun at. Now, this is a previous shot from the Jaguar Land Rover, and Land Rover purchased them, or I forget. But this is their use of CAD/CAM processes, okay? And this is one of those, and the textbook does a great job of talking about the use of computer-aided design and computer-aided machining, okay? And the difference is this: a computer-aided design means I've used a computer to generate the design of a product, whereas with computer-aided machining, I've used that design to make a machine, okay, or a part or a tool that makes something, okay? If you've ever heard the term tool and die, okay, what you're talking about are molds and tools that fit those molds. And we're seeing a renaissance in manufacturing because we're seeing a tremendous flowering of this use of CAD and CAM. Now, that all being said, I've got some resources for you that I want you to take a look at, and then also on Wednesday we'll look at them some more. One of these is 3D printing. Okay, now here's a resource for you about 3D printing. You maybe heard about it. You can go buy the things, okay? And there are people out there who will do it. Now, I can't remember, so don't quote me, but I remember someone somewhere, I was listening to a lecture or something, saying that household goods, cups, plates, forks, knives, stuff like that, okay, that all of it will start where you and I, like you would have a printer today and we print on paper. That if I were to tell my dad or my mother when they were your age, you'll have a machine at the house that will print stuff off just as well as the newspaper does, they would have said you're crazy. Okay, well, we've got them. And now what is the next thing will be 3D printers. And once they're dumbed down enough and they're priced down enough, you'll go buy a mold at the store, throw it in there, and it will make you a cup or a plate or silverware. And how will that change things for people who manufacture that? Those goods will probably become very, very high end. We don't know where this will all take us, but you know, right now you got folks that can do this for you, okay? And you can tell them, well, here's what I need, blah, 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 and make it, and they can get it done. So I wanted to take you over to this site, okay, and let you see the kinds of things that they can do. And they've got machining, they've got sheet metal, pretty impressive. And I think of someone, I can't remember, they said at least all of the stuff that we would buy now, yeah, I think it probably be silverware, plates, cups, candy dishes, stuff that's pretty easy. You'll buy molds and you'll make it, okay? Now, you know, I remember my first microwave. I do. You've lived with microwaves all your life. You wouldn't know what to do without one. I remember the very first one, and I thought, this is a miracle. I put something in within a minute, it's ready, okay? Whereas, you know, you put something in the oven and you deal with that. So we're going to see some remarkable changes because of this type of technology. So there's a lot that's going to be happening with it. So I'd encourage you to go and take a look at that some more. Now, here are, and they talk about, this is a thing of 17 objects, and look, and here's a guitar. I think it's a guitar or it's a bow. I can't tell what it is, but it's a musical instrument, okay, which is amazing. Okay, so you know, musicians, particularly professional musicians, they will keep they'll keep an instrument as long as they possibly can. My wife and I went to a concert, it's been about 3 years ago, and it was a chamber music concert, and one of the people who was the member of the group, it was like 4 people, lost her arm on the subway in Chicago because she dropped her violin, and it got down in, it was down in the L train, and she jumped down to grab that, and as she was getting out, the train came by and whacked her arm off. Now, her arm that she could play with, she kept. She was good. But that was to save that instrument because it was a Stradivarius and it was probably thousands of dollars. In fact, if you go, a lot of these symphonies and people like this, they'll rent an instrument from somebody and they'll pay, $2,000 for one night so I can play on this, on this violin or this or clarinet or something. That's a tremendous. It's just exquisite quality because the craftsmanship was so good. There's nothing you could do with it. So got some got a thing there for you to take a look at as well. And again, this is something that's uses a 3D printed object. Okay. Now I'll go back into Canvas again. And pop this out of there for just a second and go back in here. Again, I tried to just kind of find you some things to take a look at that I thought would get you thinking. Now, this is from PC Magazine, and they talk about the best printers. Now, why did I go do this? Well, I wanted you to see the pricing on these. Okay, now you're seeing stuff that ranges from, well, I don't know, yeah, it's the bet. There's something that's $2,500, $1,000. So just as I said, okay, in terms of this stuff coming down in price and getting dumbed down or more user friendly, remember, I remember the first computer I worked on commercially cost the firm, it was about a $35,000 computer, and it had $35,000, a lot of money in that day, and it had 15K of memory. If you wanted an IBM computer, IBM would not sell you the computer, you rented it, you leased it. That's how much, and of course now, who leases a computer? Well, this gives you some information about printers and their costs and what you can do with them. And I think this is going to be one of those sleeper technologies, in my opinion, because it really changes the game in terms of manufacturing things. Okay, and instead of having to have craftsmen and high-end kind of design, the machine will do it for you. Now, I know this because a long time ago, my very first job, I went out to look at a factory, okay, at a clothing factory, and they had bought a machine to sew jeans, and it sewed the outside of the jeans and put stitching on them and all this. And this is and they would literally the jeans would come through this thing, and it would have a series of needles, and they had threads and boom and cut them and then they would bring them. They have a human operator at the end who then would put the jeans in going sideways so they get the sideways cut, because they didn't have a robot to turn the thing over. But they could do in an hour what it would take them 2 days to do with human beings. And the company is Hager, is one of their plants. I'll never forget it. And I thought, wow, this really is going to change things. So this business of making things, it's changing primarily because of these 3D printers are really going to change things. And think about it like this. Think what it will do. What it will do to say the cost of fixing your vehicle if your vehicle says you need to go have part blah 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 blah, and you don't have someone they just make the part right there, okay, and they get exact dimensions, etc., and they make the part at the dealer instead of having to have parts houses and all of that. Those folks are, except for vintage vehicles or certain age of vehicle, unless they get into the 3D printing game, their days are numbered. And I guarantee you, I see the ads, and they have a very knowledgeable person who knows, this part goes here and this and this. Trust me, folks are out there working on intelligent agent systems that you can come in, you can say, well, it sounds like this, or you start the cart and you'll hear it, and boom, it will diagnose the problem. Most of the challenge for people in automobile, for example, automobile repair, is just figuring out what's wrong. Because you and I come in and they say, what's going on? And you and I go, well, it goes, or, well, it just won't start right, or it's kind of, I hear a funny sound. So they've got to go out and do that diagnostics work. And if they're good at it, they can make a lot of money. There's another thing here, and that's the idea of augmented reality. I want to talk about it for just a couple of minutes or so. Augmented reality is a different critter than virtual reality. Augmented reality is a tool that takes and enhances what you're looking at. Okay, and they have some of those kinds of they talk about those types of products. So you want to take a look at it, and that would be, I guess, the best system. Okay, but stop that advertisement because it looks like it's probably for a. Yeah, it's for a Land Rover Discovery. But augmented reality would be if you've been in a car that has a forward dash, or has a little thing that shows you're in the dashboard, in the right beneath the bottom part of the dashboard of the windshield has your speed and all that stuff. Or it will give you a picture of you're getting too close to the car. If you have a vehicle where you have driver assist, okay, and you're backing up, and you'll see it 2 bars, and then one's red showing you're getting closer, each of those are so many feet, okay, so you kind of have an idea of how close you are. That's a good example of augmented reality. Okay, it's just improving a really simplistic one would be things that improve in driving visual acuity. A lot of new cars, especially high-end vehicles, if it's at night and you turn, they'll have a lamp that's triggered by that turn. It has a sensor, and when it senses that vehicle is in a turn mode, it'll flash on and show everything over to your right or to your left, depending on what type of turn you're making. Why? So you can see what you're turning. And in a lot of places, there's not a curb, there's a ditch, things like that nature, and it's all based upon that. So that's an augmented reality type of technique. And that's something that Apple's really working hard with. An augmented reality would also be a good example is Google goggles, and that's where you can turn on Google. And if you have goggles and you press it, and what the goggles will do is show you all the restaurants. If you want to see all the restaurants where they're at, it'll kind of show you a map or a street view of where all that stuff's at. So again, now virtual reality is a different kind of critter, and we'll take a look at that for just a second. Again, these are what I call knowledge-based experiences that people are going to become used to or want. And there's a nice article here, a resource that talks about the difference between these two. This is a flight simulator, okay? And of all the people who have developed simulated experiences, people in the airline industry have done it the best. When I was in grad school, I went down to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and the folks at ExxonMobil, we got to tour it. My advisor got me in to the tour, and we went in and we saw the simulator they used for the people who were training to become captains of their oil tankers. Oil tanker is a huge piece of equipment, and it takes a while to stop. It doesn't stop on a dime. And if you miscalculate much, you can be in real trouble fast. And it was amazing how the controls and things, and this has been a long time ago. So I can only imagine And at that time, you had to, they had about 5 people who worked what we would call the bridge, and they worked their way up. And after you've been doing that, 15 years or something, you moved up to the next level and so forth. But the people of flight, they're the ones who have really, really taken this to a whole different level. And you can see this is a virtual, but it's pretty, it's amazing. Now, all of you don't get too amazed by this stuff because I know you do games and things like that. Okay, and I understand that. And so you see this kind of thing. This will give you a piece of that experience. Now you're up in the air. Now, of course, they have simulators. Real pilots have to do those, have to stay current and all that business, because you can see it's a complex piece of equipment. And how they can fly by the wire, I don't know. They got a lot more courage than I do, but those that will fly completely on instrumentation, that's a whole different deal. Now, this is Microsoft's their simulator, okay? And then I want to talk for just a minute about another one of these, which I know is near and dear to the heart of many of you, and that's gaming. Because gaming is, other than airlines, probably the most advanced in terms of realism. And a lot of this has been driven by the gaming industry, and now the movie industry are feeding each other. And I watched an advertisement the other night for some movie about Marvel heroes or something, and I was in a state of shock because I was going, this looks so real, it's not even funny. And it's the same with the gaming. I see these ads for gaming stuff, and look, I started gaming on Pong, so this stuff is unbelievable to me. But this will give you an idea of how these games and the method and how much revenue they generate and how important they've become. Now, with the Xbox and these different and PlayStation and all of these different, I get maybe the two. See, I'm not a gamer. Okay, I never got into it. Pong bored me, and I got to the point where my little brother, it's a different thing. He's all over Madden NFL 2018 or whatever. He's all over that. That's his deal. And what's happening is gaming is becoming like an entertainment form and its own community. So advertisers recognize this. And so we're going to see gaming is going to be like TV was at one point, or radio, where people are going to say it's a medium, and people use that medium just like they do others. And you can see the amount of money and that's going into this and the growth. And for you as a business person, at the very least, you want to have a presence there, okay? And how you get that presence there is another question. But this is 20 years ago, this industry was kind of there. 25 years ago, it really was kind of almost non-existent, and boom, it's just taken off. And again, like I said, this industry feeds the movie business and vice versa. And the guy who really got animation started in the movies, other than Walt Disney, who was really the progenitor of all of it, was Steve Jobs, and he started Pixar. So some interesting stuff there for you to take a look at and to get some consideration to. Now, I've got this right here, one final thing that we'll talk about. These are the 5 best-selling video games of all time, okay? And they've made people lots and lots of money. Now, I don't even know if they still have the things or not, but in the 80s, video arcades were the big deal. So there were these, I guess there still are video, I guess maybe you'd go to them. I don't know why you would. Why would you even need to? But these are the top selling games of all time. Grand Theft Auto is definitely one. Wii Sports, Minecraft. There's Tetris. I played I've lied to you. I've played many games of Tetris. Let me say that, more than I should have. And so there you got it. Again, lots and lots of money going into this, and just businesses, if they just want a presence, will need to have some type of advertising or some connection to this, and the type of the technologies, if they can if they can simulate or do a virtual reality of the kinds of stuff they do with all these with these war games and things like that. I see some of these things on TV and I go, I don't believe this, how good it is. Then what can they do in terms of manufacturing a product or figuring out the layout of a building or whatever? Well, a lot of food for thought there, but I think probably one of my favorite chapters, because it just simply looks at the future, and it's interesting to say the least. Okay, folks, that's pretty much it. Now I've got one more thing for you to take a look at, and for today, and this is a TED guest lecture, okay? And so I'd like you to take some time today to do it. Now it's now what I'd like you to do, I have to do this for common creative use purposes, is you'll need to download the file, okay, and then go ahead and go out to the net and take a look. So what I should do is just go ahead and save this on the computer. This is just so that by doing that, we're not we're just not copying and cutting, and because they have their intellectual property, excuse me. Now they put it out there for people, and they want people to see it because they're advertisers, etc. And this is how it will change sports and build empathy. And it's 9 minutes, okay, not too bad. And if anything, you can transcript it if you want, and read the transcript much faster than you can hear the guy. If you want to have both going on at the same time, you want to stop and pause, you can do that as well. Okay, that'll pretty much do it, folks. I'll see you Wednesday, and we'll talk some more about these issues in the chapter, and I'll have some more guest lectures for you to take a look at, and we'll go from there. Let me see who I've got out here. I've got Christian, Libby, glad to see you. Martin, Robert, glad to see you. Sam and Shane. Anybody have a question? Anybody? I see a couple of you. Anybody? Okay. Just as talkative as you are in class. All right. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. And I'll stop the share. And then we'll